and welcome to the West London Sport QPR podcast. I'm David McIntyre and I'm joined by West London Sport's Ian McCullough and former MK Don striker Kevin Gallen. Thanks very much for some nice comments about the previous podcast. I know you were all really pleased to see the lads back. There were one or two, so perhaps we could be a bit more positive, a bit more upbeat. So, all right then, we'll give that a go by all means. Kevin and Ian, I know you were, unlike me, both at Coventry on Saturday. Kev, happy with what you saw?
Well, it's just great to have Alan Partridge on the show, Ian. Yes, I went to the game and it was a very, very enjoyable last game of the season. Sun was shining, the QPR fans were a good voice, and we got a win, probably deserved it. Coventry, a decent team. I thought we played well. Ilias Chair scored a really good goal. At the time, I thought the keeper, because I was behind the goal, I thought the keeper, what's he doing? But I saw another angle and it actually was a very, very good goal. Bit fortunate with the second, but sometimes you need that. And then I thought we defended really well, showed good shape at the back, two banks of four and a five, and then Linda Dykes up on his own, but well organised. A real good away day for QPR, and especially for the supporters, because we've had a lot to suffer for the last few years, but that was a great end to the season, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Kev, you've been. I know that the shape is something that you've felt was a problem earlier in the season, particularly under the previous manager, and particularly away from home. So obviously, yeah, you impressed with that, like what you saw there in terms of the way they were set up.
Yeah, because I think scoring the first goal in any game is so important, and I think the stats say, I don't know, I think they're really high, maybe 70%. You're not going to lose that game when you score first, and QPR I've got into a good habit of scoring first. But then I have to, give credit to, your Steve Cook, an experienced centre half, and next to him was Morgan Fox, who another experienced centre half. Maybe they haven't got the legs what they used to have, but they've got the brains, they've got the positioning. And what I've always believed, if you've got leaders at the back and experience, they sort of get people around them and keep it nice and compact. Isaac Hayden, another experienced campaigner, an experienced pro, he stands in front of the two back fours, protect the two centre halves, protecting them. And I think the defence and the goalkeeper will probably come on to that in a bit. I thought they had really good games.
Ian, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I kind of agree with all of that. I thought it was a lovely day. Weather was out, sun was out, big crowd, massive Rangers turnout. I think there's a lot of speaking to people on the train. There's just a lot of there for the grace of God go I kind of sentiments about what was going on at St Andrews and Home Park, etc. That you just go and enjoy the game and not worry about results going other ways. And I mean, the ironic thing is, we assumed that after the Preston game, it was done, but they kind of needed to win those last two games, Coventry and Leeds, as it turned out, just to kind of, otherwise it really would have been kind of very tight as to whether they survived or not, given that everyone won on the last day. Blackburn beating Leicester, I don't think anyone saw that happening. So it was, but also as well, it's just nice to finish the season three successive wins, almost a clean sheet, goal right at the end. But I mean, lots of positives. I mean, Marty obviously took heed of what we said, that he should play Joe Walsh in the last game, and he did. Reggie Cannon, who's had a difficult, he's got a bit of stick. Reggie Cannon, I think there's a decent player in there. I just think he's come in mid-season. He's had no pre-season, hadn't played for 5 months, and you're thrown straight into a kind of a difficult situation. New country, new club, everything that was going on. I think with the pre-season behind him, we might see a better version of Reggie Cannon next season. I thought he was up against Haji Wright, who's a tricky customer, and all up until the kind of last 5 minutes where he beat him, put a good cross in for Jamie Allen to score. He did pretty well, so that was a positive. Dixon-Bonner, I thought, got a chance, did very well to set up Chair for that brilliant goal. I mean, it's funny, I actually thought it took a deflection as he scored it, and it wasn't until it's actually in the media room at half time. The Coventry social media guy was waxing lyrical about how good the goal was, and reckon it's the best goal he'd seen down at wherever it's called, the Rico Arena or whatever the guy is under now, in 5 years. And he showed it to me on the video. The way he got the bend on it, just to kind of, take it past the keeper. It was a brilliant goal. It really was. And, he's been really strong the last few weeks of the season. That's when you need your big players to stand up. So, as a positive finish to him. And, overall, it's just, if you compare the feeling after the last game at home last season against Bristol City, when they were easily beaten 2-0, it looked very pedestrian and a lot of people walking out going, it's going to be a tough season next year. If you compare that to what we saw, at Coventry, it's kind of, chalk and cheese. It really is. So, yeah, good day all round.
Talking of positives, Joe Walsh, Championship debut, did very well. Good goalkeeper. They've got high hopes for him. I thought he was a decent signing when they made it, the kind of signing that perhaps they should be looking to make. Obviously, it's only one game, guys, but did he look to you like he might be No.1 material and save the club maybe a bit of money this summer? Kevin, what do you think?
I thought he had a really good game. He looked unfazed. He looked confident. He made some good saves. But you know what goalkeepers are. How old is he, Dave? Ian, how old is he? Do you know?
22. He's just turned 22.
22 still is quite young for a goalkeeper, because, I always feel that goalkeepers are all about the less mistakes you make, the better you are, and concentration. Because I sort of believe that goalkeepers, most of them can make, do you know what I mean, shots, that most of them are shot stoppers. I think it's all about goalkeepers, all about decision making and making the right decisions. And I thought he had a really good game. He actually showed bravery. There was a sort of him and Ellis Sims went together, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute, it's just the last game of the season. You're going in for that. Even Ellis Sims as well. He's a bit more experienced. He's like thinking, do you want to get a broken nose or whatever? But they both went in together. It was a good clash, and they both got up in the end. But no, he was very good. But I have to say, I can't judge on that game. You say yes, but you have to see over a period of time how he would get on. I think it's too early for me to judge. But what I would say, he's got a good shape. He's got the tall. He looks flexible. Looked like he had a good kick. So he's got a lot of positives going for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, he's out of contract now, so hopefully, if they have high hopes for him, then now's the time to kind of get him to sign a new deal. But the noise is coming out of the club and from the player on Saturday that he will be staying. But it's I mean, for me, I'm always wary about judging goalkeepers, outside of the obvious. But to me, he just passes the eye test. He's got the right size for a goalkeeper. He caught every cross. He looked more than competent with the ball at his feet. I mean, he was thrown into action really early in the game. It was after about a minute. It was either Kenny Powell or Morgan Fox really undersold him with a back pass, and he had to come out and sort of, I think it was Sims that he went in with, and he got it away, albeit unconvincingly. But it was kind of almost settled him down. It was a good thing that happened. Just early touch in the game, and he sort of grew into it. Really made some good saves. I mean, he's got when they signed him from Gillingham, he was actually included on a young England goalkeepers kind of camp up in St George's Park with all the best young keepers in the country. So he's got a bit of kind of pedigree to him. He's just been unlucky with injuries, as I alluded to last week. He probably would have got a run in the side 2 years ago when Rangers had like sort of 5 or 6 goalkeepers injured, and Murphy Mahoney got the run instead. Mahoney for me looks too small. But Walsh looks, as I say, the right kind of profile, as they say, from modern day goalkeeper. The knock on him, sort of speaking to people in the goalkeeping department, is that he beats himself up a bit too easy. When he makes a mistake, it takes him a bit longer than you'd like to recover from it, and sort of dwells on it a bit too much. And I think what's that old adage? If you're a goalkeeper, you need to have a mind like a goldfish, because you just have to forget, move on very quickly. But, there is that to think about. But I mean, from what Cifuentes said on Saturday, that loan spell he had at Accrington early in the season has been brilliant for him. It really kind of helped him grow up. And, you've always said, Kev, playing out on loan, whether it be League One, League Two, is, it's the perfect thing for a young player. So, I mean, I'm kind of on the mantra, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And from what I saw on Saturday, you'd say, yeah, I think he probably is worth having a go with. I mean, let's be frank about it. He can't make as many mistakes as Begovic has made this season in terms of, goals that he's been responsible for. So, and if it can save a couple of £1 million instead of having to buy someone who's sort of 28, 29, then, I'm all for it.
Mate, come on. If you're good enough, you're old enough. Your exact words before we started this were, it might be time, it might be shit or get off the pot time for Joe Walsh, and you should have stuck to that. Come on. Don't shy away from saying that.
It's a family audience, Paul. I can't be using such vulgarities.
Perfectly fair comment. No, I mean, he does look a good keeper, doesn't he, Walsh? But 22, as Kevin said, is very, very young for a goalkeeper. I mean, I always think goalkeepers are a little bit like heavyweight boxers, particularly goalkeepers of that frame, of that type. The smaller ones, not so much. But the big goalkeepers of that type, they tend, like heavyweight boxers, to peak into their 30s, sometimes well into their 30s. So he is very, very young for a goalkeeper. So
I mean, David Seaman was signed as a 23-year-old, though.
He was, and Seaman's an interesting one, Ian, because if you think about possibly the best goalkeeper in the post Phil Parkes era for QPR, most people would say David Seaman, and quite rightly. But I think if you were going to go by actual performances for QPR, I think Jan Stejskal would be ahead of him. And the reason for that was that Seaman was not the finished article when he was with us. He pretty much reached his peak when he went to Arsenal. Seaman made a lot of mistakes, even when he was around the England squad. So I do think Seaman's a good example. There's an example there of someone who did really peak into his 30s. 22, yeah, very, very young. But like you said, would he not be an improvement on what they've had this season? I suppose it depends whether or not it hits a sticky patch or not. It's fair enough in an end of season game, isn't it? But if you're actually there from the start and one or two things don't go your way, sorry, Kev, carry on.
Yeah, I just felt on it, and I think you're right in what you're saying, and at the age and stuff, where Begovic probably makes a mistake, and which he has made quite a lot, but it don't really faze him. Where a young lad comes in, makes a mistake, how does he recover from that? Like Ian said, he might beat himself up too much. At the end of the day, any goal that goes in, somewhere along the line, there's been a mistake, and it's not necessarily the goalkeeper, but the defence. I think Jerry Francis always used to say there's 3 mistakes towards about every goal conceded. But the thing with Begovic, made a lot of mistakes, but didn't seem to faze him. Joe Walsh comes in, makes some mistakes, fans get on his back. We all know the script, and this. How does that affect him? How does he bounce back? And as a young lad and as a young goalkeeper, that can have a big effect on a player. So it'll be interesting. I don't know whether they will have him as number 2 or go with him as number 1 or bring him a more experienced goalkeeper, or maybe Begovic another year. I can't see it. Or bring in 2 goalkeepers and maybe put him out on loan. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Because how many appearances has he made in his whole career?
I'd look at it. The thing that gets it for me is I've never played in goal. I'm not a goalkeeper coach, but I look at how I judge a goalkeeper is how competent do you look in a crowded penalty area, taking a claiming a corner or claiming a cross or that sort of. And he did that well. Whereas I think sometimes with Begovic corners and that, you kind of. Your heart's in your mouth sometimes. Is he going to catch this? Is he going to punch this? Is he going to fumble it? And I looked at that was even with David Marshall. David Marshall had a very good career. They signed him as a kind of in his mid-30s or early 30s. And even with him, I didn't feel confident with him on crosses. Sometimes he caught them, sometimes he didn't. The hands, he was a bit too brilliant shot stopper. But I mean, so when do you do you sign a 26-year-old goalkeeper and then is he a progress stopper to Walsh, or is it? What's the point of having him around if you're not going to sort of have him in line to potentially, be your starter?
Well,
it's the same with
well, look, for me, Begovic, he's got no spring in his legs, and what I mean, or bounce, and what I mean by that, he can't jump, and he can't move his feet. He looks heavy-legged, and I mean, a prime example was, a couple of corners he couldn't jump. The Watford goal at home when he didn't move his feet quick enough for a goal. I just feel that his legs are gone. So Joe Walsh, really good potential, the right profile, right shape. Do you get another goalkeeper in a 26 and say you two battle it out? Start with Joe Walsh. He might have a few bad games, whatever. Take him out. Put the another goalkeeper in, and you need competition in every position. Healthy competition is healthy, because if you've got no competition and you're guaranteed to play, it's like, well, I'm playing every week. But if you see someone on the bench who's like, or you're training with, and you're looking at him giving it, wow, he's a good goalkeeper. I've got to be, my standards in training and my standards in matches has to be, 9, 10 out of 10. I have to put the effort in. I can't take my finger off the pulse here. I need to be working hard. So I would say the best thing would be Joe Walsh, sign another goalkeeper, a bit more experience, if they can, at 25, 26, 27, and then battle it out for the number one.
I mean,
could there be because we've only seen him once.
Could there be an argument that Murphy Mahoney's the number two? I mean, he's the most experienced keeper they got after Begovic. I think he played like half a dozen games in the Championship for Rangers, and then he had that until he got injured. He had sort of 3/4 of the season on loan at Swindon in League Two, so he's probably seen a lot more league football than Walsh has. Is it?
Well, the thing that Murphy
Ian, you said it before. I actually think he actually is technically as good as anyone, but it's the height thing.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm playing against QPR and he's in goal, every corner, every free kick, I'm putting it on his head.
Yeah,
and putting it right on him.
I do remember,
and that's not. That was the Sheffield United game a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He actually played well, but the corner was on top of him. They knew. So unfortunately, I just don't think. I hope I'm wrong, because he seems like a good lad. Technically, he's sound. But like I said, the profile of goalkeepers now, majority 90%, 95% are all 6'2". Well, the smallest 6'3", really. The top keepers are massive, and that's just the profile, the shape. And I know some clubs, when they look at goalkeepers and you say he's 6'2", they will say no, got to be 6'3" at least.
The thing with Murphy Mahoney as well is that, no disrespect to him, but he did get a couple of appearances because of circumstance, because other goalkeepers were injured. So he's in a fortunate position with those circumstances. I mean, he's got a couple of Championship appearances on his CV, and that then helps him get a better loan move, and his career's off to a better start than maybe a goalkeeper who's perhaps more capable but isn't in the right place at the right time in the way that he is. I suppose the thing with Walsh as well is that it's about protecting the investment. I mean, Begovic at his age is not an investment as such, so he can have a bad game or a bad season and get some stick, and you're not actually damaging your own product. I think the thing with Walsh, like any youngster, and I think Sinclair Armstrong's a good example of this, is he's had one game, it's been impressive. Next season, could you get him 10 games? And 10 games at the age of going on 23 in the Championship would be pretty good. The following season, could you get him 20, 25 games? And just let him build that way, in the way that you'd expect any youngster, to build. So I think the potential is definitely there with him. Like you said, he's got the height, he's got the profile, he's got everything. He does look a good goalkeeper, but they need to be careful, because that's an investment they do want to be careful with. In terms of possible investments and players elsewhere, in midfield, Kev. How do you think things have looked there? We've had some quite decent options in that second part of the season. Isaac Hayden, your thoughts on him? We're expecting him to perhaps get himself a payoff with Newcastle and potentially be available. Would you, if it came to it?
Well, it depends on the money situation. I think we talked about it. He's on big money at Newcastle Premiership team. do they subsidise some of his wages, or do they just pay him up, whatever, and then comes to QPR on a reduced wage? But look, players will never come, and very rarely come and take less money. If you're on 50 grand a week and QPR offering 10, just say for instance, he's still going to get his 50 grand because Newcastle will be paying his 40. That's just the way it works. I think he's done really well. I think he's an experienced player, big and strong, good positional sense, knows the game. Don't think he's great on the ball. I think he's when he needs to make a harder pass than just a simple 5-10 yards, I think he struggles, but he's got good athleticism, got good attitude. Stands in front of that back four, wins headers as well. He's got the profile of a Premiership player, 6'2", athletic. I don't know. It depends. It depends. He's had a good finish to the end of the season, and I know I've been hearing stuff that he wants to come back and live in London. So QPR is ideal for him. I don't know. It all depends on money, Dave. It just depends on how much he gets paid up and how much he wants from QPR, or have they got other players, maybe younger? Because over the last few years, we've talked about, the policy with QPR was buy young, develop, sell, reinvest in the team. He's not someone who is you're not going to sign him and sell him. There's no money. That's just a here and now for next season and the season after, signing, hopefully maybe to stabilise or push on for the playoffs, maybe getting ahead of myself. But there's no sell-on money there. And what is QPR's policy? What is the game plan? Is it to buy young, develop still, and sell and reinvest? If that's the case, Isaac Hayden isn't your man. But if you want someone with experience and stand and head and help out the back four, and probably a leader on the pitch and a leader in the dressing room for a couple of seasons, then he is your man.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, he's still a good age. He's only 27. He's not Colback's 34, so there's absolutely, he's closer to the end than the start. But he's a good player, Colback. I think Colback's better on the ball than Hayden, as Kevin's already said. What I like about him as well, he started out as a centre back. That's what he was. He's been moved further forward, so he can play centre back too. So you've also got that option to put him in there. And as I say, he's 27. The red flag about him signing was the injuries. He had a rotten 18 months where he barely kicked the ball at Newcastle and then at Norwich last year. So he's played this season, more games than he has in the last 3 years. So that's a positive. And I think with the full pre-season behind him, we can see a better player. But I like the fact that I said last week, Sam Field was a one-man midfield for a long time, and you've got options, so you can sort of switch it around because you're going to pick up bookings and injuries in that position. So if you've got three players that can do that, the player, he knows the club, he seems happily there. I would sign him. And then, you talk about, resale value. Yeah, I agree with that. But, are you going to find someone as good as Isaac Hayden for less money? I don't know. I don't know what they're looking at. I don't know.
I agree with you, but it's like, it's how much are you going to spend on a centre midfield player where you've got Sam Field who's signed a new contract? Because there's obviously the budget, or you're going to try and save money here to go and buy a striker, which the club desperately needs. Look, if I was me, I'd probably sign Isaac Hayden because he's done well, he's experienced. He brings height to the team for set pieces, both ends, which has been a major improvement the last 2 or 3 months. We scored another set piece again on Saturday. Morgan Fox was a set piece, so we've improved so much in defensive and attacking, and he's part of it because if he goes up, one of their big players has to mark him as well. And if you've got 6 or 7 6-footers, which we have, then you're a threat. But it's just a case of budget-wise, where do you spend your money? Do you spend your money on on a striker, wherever they are, or attacking play. Because if Willett goes, which looks likely, you need to replace him. Illy's chair's got what 1 or 2 years left. You've got to make a decision on him to get some money. I know we're going over an old ground. This is where do you prioritise? And knowing managers like I do, if there's any money spare, they'd rather buy a centre forward than a defensive midfield player or a right back.
I mean, I think they'll have a little bit more headroom this year with the budget than last year. It's the FFP window's been cleared, and there's this new money coming in from Sky, which is the TV money's gone up. So you'd like to think that he's got a little bit of money to kind of spend in the summer. We touched it again last week. If Clark Saucer goes and you get good money for him, you can bring in money that way. I think there's, I certainly think there's a lot more wiggle room this summer than there was last summer. And it's QPR; they always sign someone, don't they? So
we're talking about last summer. I mean, I suppose the equivalent player in the squad this time last year, that sort of midfielder who's might play a bit, perhaps might be on the bench, is that kind of like third or fourth midfielder, was probably Duke McKenna, Stephen McKenna, who was around that. So if you go from Duke McKenna, with all due respect to him, to someone at a profile of Isaac Hayden or someone in that ballpark, you've improved the squad, haven't you, in the space of 12 months? That is an upgrade. I suppose that's the most important thing.
I think as well. I mean, with you, Dixon-Bonner, he's 23. I thought he did all right on Saturday, Kev. What did you make of him?
Yeah, no, I think that was the best game I've seen him play. But we just got. He did play well. He passed the ball. He got about the pitch. He looked a good player on Saturday. But we can't take the last game of the season when safe, the pressure's off. And go back to Joe Walsh. It's when you play Leeds away on a Tuesday night or something like that. That's when the real test. Because at the end of the day, it's a lovely day. Crowd was brilliant. Away fans, our fans were brilliant. But it's a winter. It's a winter sport. It's November, December, January, February when you got to dig in and pick up points. And QPR have been the last few winters haven't had the steal for me. Always great at the start of the season, sun shining, but when it's November, December, your Tuesday night up north, that's when you got to dig in and produce results. And as Dave said, Isaac Hayden is a big upgrade from the previous year. There's no doubt about that. And that's the type of player who will dig in, who knows, who's been there and done it, and knows what's required to get a result in those conditions and those atmospheres, and knows how to do it because he's been there and done it. And you do need experience in your team, always.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few clubs interested in Dixon-Bonner. I mean, he could go somewhere if he wanted to. I think this summer, perhaps get himself a League One club and get some, get regular games next year. So it'd be interesting to see how his career develops, because he's done well at QPR, isn't he? I think he's made 16 appearances, which for someone who came in without any first team experience, that was, he's not had a bad year. Does look a good player. Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention Osayi-Samuel, who is obviously moving on. I think Kevin might have a view on this, because both myself and him have been sceptical of some of the players that have come through over the years, but he's made a good few appearances. I think he's served the club well. What do you reckon,
Ian? Yeah, I mean, 100 appearances, championship level. I think, he deserves credit for that. The pros of Osayi-Samuel, he always willing, never went missing, committed. But, he wasn't quite the level that you'd want for a championship player. But that, but I thought, he showed great, you can give him quite a bit of stick on social media. I think he's mentally quite strong. He's, been left out this season under Cifuentes, but he's, the whole incident with the Todd Kane thing, he kind of, he came through that. And, he's been there since he was 8 years of age. So you kind of have to have a bit of respect for him for that. But, whether or not, players like that, you need to be better from the academy. Yeah, you do. They need to be producing better as a far player. Sorry, they need to be producing players that are far better from the academy, and try and get some sell-on value for them. But as for him, I'll give him a bit of credit.
Okay.
Yeah, no, fair play to him. He always tried. But like Ian said, I don't think he was up to the standard of Championship standards. But if someone offers you a 4-year contract, you're not in the Championship team, you're not going to turn it down, are you? So you don't not sign a contract like that. So that's not his fault. But fair play to him. He's been there for a young time. I actually coached him, and when I was at QPR, he actually started out as a centre forward, and then he moved to right wing, right midfield, and he ended up at right back. So those things can happen, But now I wish him all the best for the rest of his career.
It's a player though that has walked away for nothing. I mean, for me, and I've said this before, I think the success of an academy, you don't just judge it on players who come through and are great for the first team. I think it can also be about getting guys who are perhaps not at their level, who come in, who make some appearances, are worth a few bob, not a lot of money, maybe just 200 or 300 grand, but it all adds up. And you can develop players that way. That is success of sorts. I just think it's a little bit disappointing that someone like that comes in and in the end walks away for no fee of any kind. But I suppose you could make the case that he served the club in other ways with the appearances that he made. Was he any good up front, Kev?
Not really. I can't remember. I can't remember. No, that's
we'll end it there.
You can't knock someone who's been there since 8 years old. So well done. Yeah. That's a great stint. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also just what you mentioned, the Todd Kane thing, Ian. For those who don't know, that was when Todd Kane took his place. I think it's fair to say Mark Warburton was keen to replace him. Kane went on another podcast and talked in quite derogatory terms about Ozzy, and was basically suggesting that he was Kane, that is, was a highly rated young player, and at the same time, Ozzy was playing in Scotland on loan. And I think Mark Warburton got that absolutely right, which was that he preferred Kane as a player, but he essentially slung him out of the club for that. And his view was very much that, the lad deserved credit for going to Scotland on loan, and that was something that he should be praised for, not derided for, and that he deserved respect. And I think Warburton showed him due respect there. So fair play to him. And let's hope he does well in his career. He'll get a club. He's got a good attitude. So good luck to the lads. Good luck to the lads. All right, boys. Thanks a lot. We'll leave it there. Until next time. Cheers, everyone.